my fault. I didn't mean to create some confusion, but I'm sure I did. So anyway, the people that come in a little bit late, they can catch up as we go. Again, what we're trying to do today is we're talking, and I want you to remember what we're saying here about teacher growth and development, because this is what this is all about, teacher growth and development. And we are trying to simplify this procedure as
There's
much
handouts
as
back
we
here, hon.
possibly can,
On the
so we
chair.
don't have so much anxiety in the faculty. So I'm going to stop for just a second because we got about 20 people coming in right now. So if you guys can come on down. Did you get the handout? There's two John, did you see anybody behind you?
No.
Okay. That's what, I forget who I just asked, that's what they said too. Okay, we're going to start over again. I apologize, but basically our professional development today is going to be on teacher growth and development. And I want you to key in on those words. It's growth and development. We're trying to get better at what we do. And also what we're trying to do is obviously simplify this process so that there's not so much anxiety among our faculty. So just keep remembering as we go through the process, it's all about teacher growth and development. And as we talked about before, and I think most of you know, my philosophy is I've always been, every day that I come into the building, I try to get better at what I'm doing. And hopefully that's what everybody is going to be trying to do. Every day we come in, we're trying to develop that philosophy of trying to get better at what we do. So what I want you to do is quit stressing, quit worrying, and we're all going to work at this together. And failure or burnout is not going to be an option for us. So please quit stressing over this and quit worrying about it. We're all going to get through it together because it's a growth and development plan. Now, if I went around the room and I said, okay, what is iObservation? You know, and I won't do that. But if I were to ask you that, I don't know how many could say, okay, this is what it is. There is a glossary, I think, in the back of one of our handouts that pretty much talks about common language that we'll be talking about throughout the year. And on the iObservation, what it states is it's just a multi-purpose, web-based online tool that aids in teacher feedback and evaluation process to include recording observations, data, evaluations, teacher observation protocols, and Jenny's going to talk a little bit more later about the protocols, conferencing, discussion groups, and a resource library for professional development. So, again, that's what we mean by iObservation when we're talking about observation. We've talked about before, we won't be successful if we work in isolation, but we will be successful if everyone joins in and we all work together in the process. Jenny, can somebody hit that and move to the next slide, please?
Sorry. There we go. Thanks. Sorry, I was handing out handouts.
April. On the next slide, obviously, just for a quick review, remember there were 4 domains that we talked about last time, and we're going to be focusing on domain 1, which is the classroom strategies and behaviors. That's what we'll be focusing on. And in that domain, remember there were 9 design questions. Okay, again, what is a design question? Well, if you look at the glossary, it will explain to you what a design question is. But it's basically questions that teachers ask themselves as they are designing learning experiences for their students. That's all a design question is. And there also, remember, there are 41 what we call elements, or 41 indicators of instructional strategies. And what we're going to be dealing with this year is design question 1, 8, and 9. So we're not going to be dealing with all 9 of those design questions or all 41 of of those indicators. So, as you look at design question number 1, it's talking about communicating learning goals and feedbacks. And are you providing clear learning goals and scales? Are you tracking students' progress? And are you celebrating success? Those are the 3 things that we're dealing with in that design question 1. Can you, April or Jenny, hit the next slide, please? The next slide, of course, is the domain 1, which is the classroom strategies of behavior and lesson segments involving routine events. And if you look on there, hopefully you can see it. Design question 1 says, what will I do to establish and communicate learning goals, track student progress, and celebrate success? Okay, well, there again, we look at what is a learning goal? What do we mean by a learning goal? And it's just a statement of what students will know and be able to do. It's not a difficult thing. Again, it's a statement of what students will know and what they'll be able to do. Now, Jenny's going to get in this in much more detail in a little bit, but there are basically 2 types that we're going to kind of key on today. One is a procedural, which in your goal you will be writing, students will be able to, whatever that goal may be. And there's also declarative, which is basically talking about understanding or informational knowledge. So students will understand. So students will be able to, or students will understand. So this whole page here is the protocol. So when you hear that common language again, when you hear one of us talking about protocol, we are talking about the entire page. And so as you're scanning through those things, or when you're looking through your iObservations, you also look at the teacher evidence. And in that teacher evidence, as we go in your classroom, does the teacher have a learning goal posted so that all students can see it? Well, I've been in several rooms, and many of those rooms, and I won't take off, trust me, for the rooms that I was in before we even talked about this, but many people have learning goals up. Some also have the instructional strategies or what you're doing that day, the learning objectives for the day. You don't have learning goals. But we'll talk about that more a little bit later. Again, what the learning goal is a clear statement of knowledge or information as opposed to an activity or assignment. We have a little thing that we're going to do in just a few minutes that you can work with a partner and you're going to say, is this a learning goal or is it an activity or assignment? And again, remember what we said a learning goal was. Okay, and then the scale, Jenny's going to talk about that also. But there's just a couple of things that I want to kind of talk about, from the developing there to the applying to the innovative. The developing provides a clearly stated learning goal accompanied by a scale or rubric that describes the level of performance. Well, basically in the developing, that's teacher behavior. That's what the teacher is basically doing. To get to the applying, if you'll look right next to that on the applying part, the goal is exactly the same, except the key is down toward the end, monitor students' understanding of the learning goal and the level of performance. And so that basically gives you more student evidence. So you're going from more teacher things on the developing to more students on the applying. And then the last part, the innovative, and we won't don't worry too much about that, but I'm just kind of throwing this out a little bit so to give you hopefully a better understanding, and I'm trying to simplify it a little bit for you. That's a desired effect, and basically teachers have done something differently for the students who didn't get it. So the students who didn't get it the first time around, the teachers have done something a little bit differently to make sure that they get it. So that's what we're talking about in scales. Again, I'm just trying to simplify it for you. Jenny will get into more detail in a little bit later. Okay, if you can hit the next one, why do we have learning goals and why are they so important? Well, according to Marzano, the starting place, and I just have to read that. For all effective instruction is designing and communicating clear learning goals. You can read the rest of that. But it all starts, this whole evaluation, this whole growth model, all starts with designing those clear learning goals so those students know what's expected of them. And again, we're not talking about those learning goals every day. We're talking about the unit learning goals. Okay, we get one more. Okay, learning goals versus activity. Get with somebody and kind of look at, we have on this domain 1, if you look at the next page in the back, we will have learning goals versus activities versus assignments. And take about 2 or 3 minutes thinking about what we have previously stated and tell me on those 10 statements, is that a goal or is that an activity? And if you want to talk with your partner, feel free to talk. If you want to do it by yourself, you certainly can do it by yourself. And we'll give you 2 or 3 minutes, and then hopefully you'll have an understanding of what is a learning goal compared to an activity or assignment.
Try to think outside the box. Is that an assignment or an activity?
How are we coming? Need more time or?
Hold on. Yes,
More
one
time?
more time.
Okay. All right.
Number 9.
What do you say?
10 is not oh, it's 2. That's an activity. Right? So you have a goal. I can't even think. That would be a goal. I need to pick up a couple of these for Michael.
Let me see a show of hands. Who's done? Who's done? Okay, so we'll give you just a couple of minutes more and then we'll go.
Would you like my boots? I'm just saying. You know, like, okay. So how did you
And again, I hope that we're simple. I mean, we're trying to the best of our ability to simplify this, and hopefully we are. But if we're not, see me later or whatever, and we'll go over it with you. Okay, everybody done? Okay. Number 1, goal or activity? Goal. Because? We'll be able to. Okay, great. Number 2. Activity. Good. Number 3. Goal. Because why? We'll be able to. Great. 4. Activity is correct. Number 5. Goal because of why? We'll understand. Okay. Number 6. Goal. Okay. Number 7. Goal. Again, we'll be able to. Number 8.
Activity.
Okay. Well, this was when we did this, when we had to go through this training, this was a tough one for us because I put activity. Others put it as a goal, and we kind of talked about, it probably could be either one, but because it doesn't have that will understand or will be able to, I guess it has we put it as an activity. But I think on that one it could actually go either way. Number 9, oh, and number 10. Great, you guys got them. Good job. Way to go. Okay, we're going to turn it over to Jenny, and she's going to get you in a little bit more depth on this.
Okay, well, this is just a recap of what he just said. So pretty much, we're looking at 2 types of learning goals, and I put it in parentheses over here. The will be able to statements are what we call procedural knowledge. These are things that have steps. They have a procedural way to get through them. The understand one is declarative or informational knowledge. So we're going to go a little bit more into that real quick. So procedural knowledge is knowledge that's oriented towards skills, strategies, or processes. Over time, this knowledge is shaped by the learner. When fully developed, it can be performed at a level of automaticity or controlled processing that is developed through practice over time. So somebody give me something that would fit with procedural knowledge. What would be something students do that they have to keep practicing over time to get better at?
Solving equations.
Multiplication tables. What?
Solving equations.
Solving an equation. So anything with steps is going to be your procedural. Declarative is informational knowledge. Declarative knowledge is developed through review, revision, error analysis, and identification of similarities and differences. So how would this be different? Give me an example.
Compare and contrast.
Okay, so 2 different things. You're giving them 2 things and you're asking them to compare. Good. So you're having to understand something more. You're having to get why is the area this, or why is, that kind of stuff. You're asking that why question so that kids understand. So here's where we're getting to. With a procedural knowledge goal, what you're wanting to do is get to fluency. That's the ultimate outcome of a procedural goal. A declarative goal, the ultimate outcome is to deepen understanding. Okay, so if you just remember, and I always remember declarative has a D and so does deepen understanding. That's because they made us take a test, and so that was my memorization strategy. But declarative and the deepening understanding goes together, procedural and fluency. Is there anything that they have to keep practicing? So let's see, scales on the piano, what would that be? Procedural, that's right. Okay. So, partner activity, it's the next one, exercise 2.2, declarative versus procedural. Again, get with your shoulder partner and decide, is this statement declarative, procedural, or could it be either? The way it's worded. Real quick.
This is all too fast. Maybe if we drew pictures and video. No. We can get right.
Refusal skills mean when is it teaching a child when it's appropriate to say no? That's a special ed thing, sir. It's a social skill.
English characteristics, that's context, right?
Some of these stumped me too.
Front end rounding. Is that math? It's front end rounding math.
Yes. Survey sampling technique. That's the front end rounding. Front end rounding is hard.
Front end rounding, if you have like 158 and 200 and something, you just use the one that says 200. You don't look at the other answers. It's pretty stupid. Nobody really rounds like that. I said, we're not, I'm not checking. Take the Friend surrounding is like, if you have a number that's 200 and something, or 300 and something, you just do 200 plus 300, no matter what the other numbers are after.
That's why I was like, I don't know these, even in terms of English stuff. I don't know what that is. I don't even know what subject that is. I don't even know what subject that is. Maybe science? I figured that was deep enough for like these analysis ideas and stuff to do
Okay. So like I said, it's okay if you're not done. We'll just do the rest together. Number one, what do you guys think? Procedural or declarative? Procedural, that is correct. Describe the events that led to the Cold War. Declarative, good. Determine breathing rate and heart rate. It says it could be either. It says it could be procedural or declarative, but the emphasis is on the information about breathing and heart rate. What rates are common in resting, normal, and active states, and it would be declarative. In that case, it would be reworded into something like students will understand the common breathing and heart rates for resting. So some of these depend on how you word it.
Yes.
How about refusal skills? Could be either. Exactly. Depends on how you word it. Characteristics of chance events? Declarative. Good. Keyboarding techniques? Procedural. Keeping in rhythm? Procedural. Although I argue that's genetic. Relationship between the seasons and tilt of the earth? They said declarative on here. Survey sampling technique? Either. Front end rounding. Depends on what you're doing with it, but it could be either. So yeah. You guys are getting it. You're fine. Okay. So, before we get into the scales piece, I'm going to give you one thing, and then I want somebody to turn it into a learning goal. So if I said reduce fractions, how could we turn that into a learning goal, either a procedural or whatever it is? Students will understand how to reduce fractions. Good. How about Spanish conversation? How would we turn that into a learning goal? Okay. Or I mean, Spanish teachers, make it more concise. What would you do?
Students can converse about this topic.
In Spanish. Okay, perfect. All right, so you guys get how this works now. You just take whatever topic and turn it into a learning goal. Okay, let's talk about scales. So the scale is an attempt to create a continuum that articulates distinct levels of knowledge and skill relevant to this specific topic. So you want to think of it as a learning progression. Okay? So you've got a scale, usually, Marzano does all of his scales from a 0 to a 4, being 0, you can't do it even with help. All the way to a 4, you're above the standard. And I want you to also think that, and here's something just that's good to know, you can use your state standards as your learning goals. Totally, you don't have to rewrite them. All the Common Core standards are already written pretty much in a way that it's either a procedural or a declarative knowledge type goal. It may not specifically say we'll be able to or understand, but the way the content is in there, they use the good verbs that determine that it's that way. So like I said, we don't, if it's exactly the way it's written in the Common Core or your Indiana Academic Standards, either one, if you don't have Common Core, that can be your learning goal. We're okay with that. But if you're teaching something that's outside of that, say in special ed, we have things that come outside of that all the time that aren't necessarily state standards, but we still have to teach. So you want to know how to write a learning goal, but you can also use your state standards as a learning goal. So if I ask you what are your learning goals for the unit, you can just give me your standards. That's okay. Does that make sense? Okay, so I don't want you to panic thinking you have to come up with all these new learning goals when if you've got your standards, you're good. Okay? So the scale, like I said, Marzano usually writes his 0 to 4, where the learning goal is the 3. A 4 is above the standard. And then we're looking at, what prerequisite skills are at the 2. And then those just basic recall stuff is at 1. And 0 is I can't do any of this without help. I don't know anything. Okay? So we're going to continue to talk about this a little bit more. But it will help you be able to formatively assess the students. So, here again, we've got these 4 levels. This is what Marzano uses. Does yours have to be 4 levels? No. If you already have a rubric that you use that works with kids and they understand it, use it. I don't think we have to recreate new rubrics, do we? No. But if you don't have a rubric already, this is a good way to start. Okay? So, level 1, performing level 2 and 3 activities with help. You know, we're here, we're doing that just basic recall kind of stuff. Level 2 is vocabulary, basic processes, prerequisite skills, memorization, identification. Level 3, analysis, matching, classifying, and analyzing errors, similarities, and differences. So that's where your standards are written, right in that area. Okay? And then up top, we've got synthesis, problem solving, experimenting, investigating. That's your really complex tasks that are going to be for your kids who are working even above the standard. They understand that standard so well they can do more with it now. Okay? So, to simplify that giant pyramid, your target learning goal is your 3, a more complex one is your 4, a simpler one is your 2, and then with help, partial success is the 1, and even with help, no success. So I think that really simplifies it down to what we're doing. And since your standard is really already written for you, if you use that as your learning goal, really you're only coming up with what are the prerequisite skills that my kids need to know before they'll learn this goal, and have that as your simpler goal. And then, what if they already know this when I pretest, or when I, you know, what can I do to help enrich them, okay? So, I did give you a sample scale that I created, and the science people have seen this one already. It's in your packet before the glossary. And I have this scale template as well, so I can, and this is something I can post on the Preparation Learning Connection site, so you can go there and take the template and type your own stuff in here if you want to. But I did this for one of the reading standards for literacy and science, and it's for grades 9 and 10. The actual standard from the Common Core Standards said for the number 3, determine the central ideas or conclusions of a text, trace the text explanation or depiction of a complex process, phenomenon, or concept, provide an accurate summary of the text. So that was the actual Common Core Standard. So then I was like, okay, what do kids need to be able to do in order, what do they have to know and be able to do in order to do that standard? Well, they have to know these specific terminology. Main idea, central idea, conclusion, summary, paraphrase, and plagiarism. Those are probably things they're going to need to know about before they can do that number 3. Okay? The basic processes, well, I can't ask them to summarize an entire text if they can't summarize, put a sentence in their own words, or if they can't put a paragraph in their own words. Do they know how to identify a main idea or a central idea? Can they order events chronologically? Can they draw a conclusion from just one paragraph instead of a whole text? You know, I need to be able to know if they can do those things before I'm going to be able to ask them to do that standard. So those are the kinds of maybe activities that I would need to build in for my kids that aren't getting it. And then, the number 4, this is, if they've already got the standard and can pretty much do it, what can I have them do? So I just thought of, and this is only one way to do 4. You could do 4 a number of different creative ways. But I just put on here, create a news broadcast on the topic of the text, complete with eyewitness accounts and testimonials, include all important information from the article without plagiarism. So we could have them actually perform a news broadcast, or come up with a script, or whatever. That would be another way for them to take that information and make something new out of it, to do that more complex process. So does this make sense? So everyone, does anyone have questions about what the scale, this kind of a scale looks like? Like I said, if you already have a rubric that you use for writing, for an assignment you normally give, or whatever, those are fine. But it needs to, the scale needs to fit with your learning goal. Okay, so you'll want to check and make sure that your scale just doesn't have to do with just that particular activity. Does it have to do with the learning goal that's overall, overarching? Okay? Okay,
I
go
have
ahead.
a question. I guess I'm not clear on how often we need these things, because I obviously don't have a rubric for like every single thing.
For every standard, exactly. And that's going to take lots of time, and Jim and I definitely don't expect you to have that for every single standard. We talked about having them do 1 unit. For this school year, we're going to have you create 1 unit where you have your learning goals, your scales, and then let us know when you have that, and we'll come watch you during that. Okay? Because I don't want to overwhelm you with thinking you have to do this for every single unit the entire school year. I want you to pick one. Pick one that you already think is pretty amazing or whatever, and create the learning goals and scales for it. And then once you have it done, I think that would be a perfect time for whoever evaluates you to come watch you. Just let us know that you've done it. And when it is, and like I said, it could be its second semester. That's okay. Give yourself some time. We don't expect this to happen overnight. This is not something I did when I was teaching. I would be a beginner on that protocol when I was teaching, because I didn't learn this until 3 weeks ago. So, yeah.
Okay, so could you talk a little bit about what this would look like in the classroom in terms of grades and in terms of evaluating students on these different, would there be a rubric then for the score before?
Well, I can tell you how I might do it, but you might do it differently. There's no one right way, I guess. One way I could see doing this, especially if I had a specific procedural knowledge thing I needed them to learn how to do, I would give them the goal, I would put the scale up and say, okay, where do you think you are right now? Where are you? You know, you could give them a pretest and have the kid determine at the bottom, where do you think you are on the scale now compared to how you did? Or whatever. You could say, do you think you're a 1? Do you think you're a 2? You know, where do you think you are? Then, just throughout as you're teaching and doing the actual activities where you're helping them get to that learning goal, you would be asking them to check in with you. Hey, where do you think your understanding is now? Do you think you're at a 2? Do you think you're at a 3? Where do you think you are? And then, I would use it for formative assessment, not summative. I think you can use your regular tests for summative assessment. That's okay. I don't know that I would necessarily assign grades for this either. This would be a way for me to monitor, to get to that applied and innovating level that you want to get to, or would be an informal way for me to monitor what my students know and understand about the learning goals. I could do it with having the kids fill out an exit card before they leave the classroom, and then turning that into me so I can see where I think they are on the scale. I could do that by asking everybody who thinks, you know, if you think you're a 2, come here. If you think you're a 3, come here. You know, because you can put them in groups that way. You could also set up, you know, teaching buddies or whatever. If you know that some kids are 2s and some are 3s, you can put them together to work on something. If you know, whatever. But like I said, there's so many ways you could use it. We just want to see what you come up with. I just think, and there's plenty of videos on the Marzano Research Library. If you go into iObservation and look up like teach sample videos, you can look that up and type in. I think even if you type in design question 1, there's videos. But I'm sure, and I'll look too. And if I find any that are real good at showing that, I'll send them out, because we watched a couple that were really excellent about how teachers were using the scales in the classroom. Some of them put a little box in the bottom corner of a writing assignment and then had the kids, after they were done, give themselves a score on the scale, so the teacher could see what they think they are. You know, that kind of thing. So like I said, it's just getting the students to be constantly aware of where they are on that scale. And so you really kind of have to write the scale in a way they'll understand it. Like for little tiny ones, I would never use a scale worded like this for little tiny kids. It would have to be worded with, I can do this, I can, you know, whatever. I think one of the elementary teachers was working on one where they said, I don't know anything about this topic, was what they had on 0. On number 1, they had, with my teacher's help, I can do some of this work. And then the next one up was like, I can do this on my own. And another was, I can teach someone else to do this. So there, you word it in a way that the kids can understand. Like I said, you can write it a little more complex when they're in high school. But any more questions on that particular scale or any scale? Like I said, this is one example. There are lots of Marzano scales available online that he's already created and that other schools have already created for all subject areas. They aren't necessarily from Indiana Academic Standards, but if you wanted to see more examples, if you go to Marzano Research Lab, if you just type that in a Google search, it'll come up. And then you do like a little free sign up. You go to the free resources and go down to the Proficiency Scales Bank. There's a free resources tab, and then you just scroll down to Proficiency Scales Bank. And tons of people all over the country have uploaded scales they've made in there. So it's like a big teacher sharing bank. Plus Marzano scales for the Common Core are already done for math and language arts in there. So you can see what he's done and then tweak it if you don't like the way he did it. But the Proficiency Scales Bank, you do have to give them your email or whatever. It's a free sign up. And then every time you log in, You can print scales. You can, I think it gives you PDFs. You can click on whatever scale. You can search by subject, by grade level, that kind of stuff. And then you can also print out the PDFs of those scales. And you can, I think he's even got the template there that I was talking about that I can put up for you guys. I think the template's actually there too. So if you want to create your own scales. So it's something to look at, because something you're already teaching might already be there and somebody has made one, and then you can just tweak it. So I would. Other questions? Like I said, for a unit, you know, depending on how long your units are, if you only have a 2-3 week unit or something, you may have a couple of goals for that unit, which you would have a scale for each goal. But those are the things that you would post or give the kids in a handout. And that's another thing is, Jim and I wanted to be sure you understand that if you don't have it posted up in the room somewhere, as long as the kids have it on a handout in their binder, they're referencing it somehow. It's important that the students know what the goals are and that they understand them and they know what the scale is and they are kind of aware of where they are on that scale. So if we come in, like if I come in and watch you and I don't see the goal or a scale anywhere in the room, I'm just going to send you a follow-up question that says, what are your learning goals and scales? And then if you want, you can send me a copy. If you don't, you can just say, each kid has it in their binder, you know, whatever. As long as I know, you know, that's still okay. I'm not saying you have to have a bulletin board. I don't know. Do you have other things you want to add?
Just a couple of other things. I think I've been in everybody's room, maybe but 4 or 5 that I'm going to observe. And that was one of the questions, obviously, I asked. But I knew it wasn't fair because we really haven't gone over this yet. So there's going to be a time when I'm going to hit share, and you're going to be able to go in and see what I have written, and you can answer my questions, or you can ask me a question. Now, be a little bit careful when you use share, because if you hit share all, everybody sees what we're talking about. So just hit share with me, don't hit share all. I think Jenny has a different way of getting in, probably a better and more secure way than I, and as soon as she teaches me that, I'll probably do that as well. But again, remember, this is a learning experience for us as well. And we had a pretty intensive week training on this. There was a lot of pressure because we had to pass the test.
We had 2 tests.
Yeah, 2, and I don't think I've ever been as nervous on taking tests in my life, because it was like, oh God, what if I do? If I fail this, what's going to happen? But everybody passed it, so it's kind of how we are. We're going to all be working together again, and we're all going to get through this together. Again,
one thing that's come up too with my observations is that I want everyone who understands when we ask a question, it's for our information, it's not a criticism.
Exactly.
If you have a para that's in your room or something, and I ask you, how are you using your para in the classroom? It's because I don't know. It's not because I'm asking you to change it or that I think you should be doing it differently. I'm just trying to understand how your room works and what relationship you built with that person or whatever. Like I said, any question that I ask, and I think Jim feels the same way, is not a criticism. If we have a suggestion or whatever, it'll be worded that way. Well, maybe you could try such and such, or whatever. I'm never going to ask a question and assume that you'll imply that you should do something different. That's not. I never want to assume before I put something in iObservation. I always want to clarify.
Just one more question I have, and then do you have anything else?
No.
Then we'll let you go. Do you feel more comfortable now? Do you feel a little bit more at ease, or do you feel more confused or more overwhelmed? And be honest.
Just one unit.
Yeah.
One
we're
unit.
not talking, we're talking about just one unit. And I'm going to be real honest with you. I'll probably, the next 9 weeks, I'll probably be doing walkthroughs again. I won't get to the formal evaluations until second semester. So we've got kind of a whole semester to kind of be talking through, be working on these. It's not like we're going to do this formal evaluation tomorrow or whatever. It's going to be, and Jenny's probably going to be the same way. Second semester is kind of when we're going to go in and do these. So do you feel you've got a lot of time to get on, as she said, to look at different things on those iObservations, etc.? And if you do have concerns or do you have problems, please come and see us, and we'll try to get you through it as well as we possibly can and as easily as possibly can. So one thing I don't want to do, because I've been in a lot of classrooms and I see a lot of great teaching going on.
Oh, absolutely.
And we do not want to overwhelm you to the point of you're more worried about this than what you're presenting to your students. So if you feel overwhelmed at times or whatever, come in and see us, and we'll try to get through it together.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not checking the little box that says counts toward final evaluation at all this semester. That won't be happening until the second semester when you tell me your unit is done and you're ready.
Yeah, and you'll tell us when you're ready, when you feel comfortable for us to come in.
And I am more than happy to meet with anybody who wants to sit down one-on-one and go over something at any time. Just let me know and I'll set it up on your front.
Okay?